Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Repurpose, the UK-based hockey program where I talk to legends of the game. Um, they're going to tell their stories about falling in love with hockey and their pro career in the UK. And then finally, the purpose of Repurpose is to talk about the transition of hanging up the skates, to life after hockey. And joining me today, I'm really, really grateful for this one, is the one and the only Jeremy Cornish. Jer,
Uh,
how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to
Yeah,
this.
yeah, me too, man. I was just looking through your stats on Elite Prospects, and you actually played more years on the Isle of Wight than I did. And I was one of the first guys there, and it was pretty cool to see that you played about what 6 or 7 years there.
Yeah,
It was a
was there
really
for quite a while.
unique place to play, wasn't it?
It was obviously one of my favorites. We were there for years. I would have played with one of your old teammates, Steve Ganaway, for sure.
Yeah, God, Ganny, he just kept going, didn't he? He
Yeah,
just
he
kept
did.
going.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
still keep in touch, so it's really good.
beautiful, beautiful. I'm sure we'll probably get into that in the second period. As you know, we're going to divide the podcast into three periods. First period is you're going to tell us how you fell in love with the game, and then the second period, your hockey career in the UK, and then that third period is going to be talking about your career now, which I'm interested to know because we also went to the same university, which we'll
We
all
did,
get
yeah.
into. Yeah, but first, I want to note the first time I actually saw you play, I was actually making a comeback on Sky Sports
Oh
after
yes,
when it came back onto Sky Sports covering the Elite League, and I remember my co-guy was Dave Sims, and he's like, obviously he's a Sheffield guy, and he's you keep an eye on Corny. He's a tough guy, and because I always like the tough guys,
yeah,
but I remember keeping an eye on you. That was my very first game back, and seeing you in a Sheffield Steelers uniform. So once again, we'll get into that. But I just wanted
yeah,
to note the first time I saw you play. But Jared, let's. I'm going to start the clock. Let's just drop the puck, and we'll get going with this one. Uh, I'm just going to reset everything, and our first 20 minutes starts now. And this is where you can just tell us about you growing up in Ontario and falling in love with the game and your minor hockey career.
yeah. That sounds good. I guess we'll start. I'm from Lucan, Ontario, which is just about 20 minutes north of London. I didn't play actually until I think it was about seven when I actually started playing. I had the gear from I think it was five and six. I would go to the rink first couple days, and I just didn't like it. Didn't want to do it, but I wanted to go public skating every week. We played road hockey every night after school, like constant hockey. But just something about the ice and putting all that kit on, I didn't like the first couple years. But I always had gear. Every September, Dad would take me down, and I just didn't want to play at some point for some reason I don't know. And then when I was
7 years old,
seven,
yeah, you're an old timer.
yeah. But it is quite late for Canadian kids. It seems obviously it doesn't matter in the long run, but yeah. So I remember getting into it. I played house league probably the first couple of years, and I actually played a bit of house league in between the whole way through, and probably till Bantam, and then from Bantam onwards, we had minor midget or minor major, didn't we? So every kind of minor year with children my age and year younger, I'd make the team. Then the next year I wouldn't make the team, and it kind of went like that pattern until Bantam. But yeah, I played all my minor hockey with Lucan, and then I did some affiliation with the local junior D team at the time, and then I went away to play junior A in Aurora when I
Nice.
was 17.
What is it, do you think? Like, I know, like, it's obviously Canadian culture. Kids start skating, 3, 4. They start organized hockey around 5, 6. I know you said 7 is a little bit late, but the idea of hockey just kind of flowing through the veins of Canadian kids, just like football does, with English kids and British kids. What was hockey like in your household? If your dad kept buying you the equipment, I imagine he wanted you to get going. So,
Yeah,
was he?
yeah, he's a hockey fan. He's a big Leafs fan. I don't. There was no pressure though. Where I probably now that I reflect back on my own children, and a couple of them have played. I've got three boys, and they were the same. So it's like they didn't like the kit, and the elbow pad's too tight or too loose, or one skate's too tight, and one all that kind of sensory funny stuff. And that's probably what I was going through. And then Dad just was more. He's not patient, but he was probably more patient and said, "You don't want to do it, let's go home." Whereas, with my kids, I was like, "No, like, we've got to go. We're gonna go on. We're gonna make it work." And So I think it's finding that balance of being pushy but not too pushy. Where my dad was like, if you're not ready, don't worry about it. We'll go home.
Yeah, my dad actually did the same thing for me when I started playing around 5, and going to organized hockey. And we, where I grew up in Saskatoon, like we literally went to an old barn. It was the
Yeah,
exhibition rink. And, I tell people that, there's still hay on the skate, rubber tracks and stuff like that. Cause it was actually tractor rubber. It wasn't like
yeah, yeah,
for
yeah,
hockey mats. And the equipment that we would have to get there, before the session started in the concessionary. They'd have all the equipment laid out for kids to come and buy secondhand stuff.
yeah,
And because my dad was, first generation Englishman in Canada, he wasn't sure how I was going to, get on with the sport.
yeah,
But I felt really odd. I felt like I didn't know what was going on. I didn't really, know the culture of the game or anything else. So I can really identify with that idea about like finding stuff that fit. Didn't
yeah,
know how didn't know how to put the garter belt on
yeah,
and the
yeah,
socks, and
yeah.
why would a 5-year-old need a jock strap? No, nothing's dropped yet.
Yeah,
So I was
that's true.
feeling really weird around around putting the equipment on. It was kind of interesting that you're bringing me back to those memories.
Yeah, it is. It's just crazy when you have, I've got the boys now, so I've kind of went through all that. They played for a couple seasons each. Now they're football, but it's the same thing. We take them to football. Sometimes they just need a push to get on. Not a forceful push, obviously, but I think they're better off. I think a lot of parents could quickly give up and say, "Let's just go, forget this." But the minute they're on that pitch, they're absolutely fine. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents. I see a lot of parents, at the football pitches, just, trying to get their kid on because they know that they'll have fun once they're on there and once they feel comfortable.
Yeah. So I know you're down on that arm of like London and Windsor, and that part of Ontario is just a hockey hotbed.
Yeah,
So I've actually never heard of Lucan, Ontario, but was it is it obviously a big hockey town?
it is a big hockey town. Yeah. So they had the, what's the Hockeyville? They had the NHL Hockeyville a few years ago. Do you know when
Mhm.
the NHL come in and play a game in a small town? I think it was probably maybe 3, 4 years ago they had that. So that was quite good for them. Not a lot of NHLers have come out of Lucan. Um, Couture from San Jose, I think, is probably the most notable. There's probably been some others, but it's not a really NHL kind of development hotbed by any means, that's for sure. But we all played, everybody played growing up, all of our friends, and we had I think we won the All Ontario Championship 3 times and went to maybe 3 other finals as well. So we were quite successful growing up.
Do you remember like how you started to get involved with the game in terms of watching it and maybe going and watching, older hockey players,
Oh,
or did you go
100%.
into did you go into London and watch the Knights play and stuff?
The odd time, yes, but no, it was just your local junior D team. So like those guys were heroes to me as a kid. My dad coached under 18s. My dad only coached me for 2 years in midget. He was never the dad that wanted to coach his own child. So he always coached under 18s midget hockey for, I think he did it for 20 years or something. So when I caught up, he coached me for 2 years, and that was the only time he coached me. So I would be, even as a peewee, I would be Thursday night at 9 o'clock training with my dad's team. So I was really young back then. It was kind of like, you need to be home in bed for school,
Yeah,
but I, yeah,
yeah.
Thursday nights I knew I could go do that with dad. And Wednesday night was always the local junior D team. Wednesday nights at like 8 o'clock they played. So I'd get to stay for the first 2 periods and then have to go. Dad would run me home, just down the road, obviously, when the intermission was on, because I couldn't stay for the third period because it was just too late. So
What were
those,
those memories?
oh, they
What were they
were just,
watch like watching
yeah,
these like big guys play?
it's crazy because like you think about where I've played and stuff, but I still remember their names. I still, I had a cousin that played for them. He was a star for the team, and the local guys that all played midget for my dad and then progressed to the local junior team. So those were my heroes as a kid, and that's crazy to think back now, but I still know their names, and I could name full teams, pretty much of guys that played for those junior D teams back then.
Yeah. Did you go with any buddies at the time? Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
every Wednesday night we'd all be sat up in the corner, that sort of thing, hanging out with your mates. I was a rink rat. Like I just hung out at the rink. I was there all the time, all the
yeah.
time, all the time. If I had a 5 o'clock practice, sometimes my dad would drop my gear off because he'd obviously still be at work. He'd drop my gear off at the rink in the morning, and I would just walk up straight after school.
Hmm.
And I would always be early, even when I played professionally. I'd be 3 hours before a game. I just always was at the rink.
Yeah, me too. Especially, I have my little routine on the island. We'll get into that.
Yeah,
We'll compare routines on the island.
yeah.
I'm trying to get a sense of this because a lot of guys that I'm talking to are from Canada, and the idea of when the culture of the game really bites into you because I think it's the culture of the game that I want listeners who are new to the game or who are not
Yeah,
exposed to it at such an
that's
early
right.
early
Yeah,
age what like so I suppose what like culture being ideas and beliefs and
yeah.
systems that we're brought up with. When did you start to buy into the culture of hockey? When did it start to
Oh,
flow
I
through your
think I
veins?
honestly I think right away. It's really weird that you said that because my kids now watch YouTube, so they're watching football videos on YouTube, trick shots and kind of things like that they watch. But when I was like 7, 8, 9, 10, I was watching VHS tapes on like the history of hockey. I always remember the 75th anniversary year because my mom got me the 75th anniversary VHS. And it started right from the start of the league and went right up to I think that was what 93 or something. I can't remember. But that's the sort of stuff I remember. I had Wayne Gretzky VHS. There was one about his autobiography. I read the Guy Lafleur autobiography when I was probably 10 years old, and I read that multiple times. Like there was hockey, hockey, hockey for me.
Yeah.
And not ever, obviously, I just played local hockey, so it was never an aspiration to play in the NHL, but I just loved everything about it. I could name from 10 years old, I could name Mark Messier was wearing a Winwell helmet with Louisville gloves and a Louisville stick. Like I knew who was wearing what, and from
Yeah.
a really that's that just every living moment watching VHS tapes of hockey stuff like Don Cherry's Rock'em Sock'em or like I said that 75th anniversary tape. I'll never forget that tape. So it's
Yeah.
just that's for me just knowing about the game right from a young age and I still even when I was playing over here and you walk into Edinburgh's arena and you'll appreciate this, you get that smell that you get in Canadian rinks. You don't get that anywhere else over here. I just remember walking into Edinburgh and that is a Canadian smell as you walk into that rink. And that's
Yeah.
the stuff I remember from a young age. And I was always at the rink. Like I said, my dad was coaching, so I was with him. And I'd just go up there and hang out. I'd be on the Friday night public skate, Sunday public skate. That's just where I was all the time as a kid. So that's where that came from.
You mentioned Mark Messier, and I remember watching him before he would go on face-offs, and he'd always be doing
Yeah,
the little spit. I was
yeah,
like, "What's he
yeah,
doing?" That was always the
yeah.
little Mark Messier spit. But yeah,
That's right.
and I think it is these little things that you remember growing up watching, hockey night in Canada, and
That's right.
But I suppose what I want to try to get from you too is like, what did you start to learn from it? Like when you started to start playing organized hockey, and as we're talking about the culture game, kind of the disciplines, the resiliency, because I've got a lot of people talking on social media right now about the culture of hockey.
Yeah.
And it's kind of very different to talk about the culture of the hockey in the UK compared to the culture of hockey in hey,
Hello, Rachel.
hi Rachel. To the culture of hockey in Canada. And so maybe what were the things that you were learning when you were going to the rink with your dad and also watching these guys play, and then when you start playing organized hockey and the things you start learning in a changing room at that early age?
Yeah, I think it's important to take away like the negative connotations of hockey culture. I think that is a whole other discussion when we get to junior hockey age and those things that we read about and see about. But I think it's not much different than any team sport, really. It's just that we have to be, ready to play and you want to be excited to be at the rink and learning new skills, really. And I think now with me reflecting back, I was definitely an ADHD type kid. And probably that was probably the reason why I played a lot of house league hockey because I was probably a handful, for coaches at the time. Just high energy. I'm not a bad kid, but lots of high energy. I think it gave me loads of structure. So it wasn't just hockey I was playing. I did baseball and football in the summers. So dad and mom were obviously really good at keeping me going and keeping me busy. So there was no club that I wasn't able to do, whether it was camps or anything like that. So for me, it was about the structure. And I was organized as a kid. I'd always have my gear packed and I loved being in my room, watching a hockey tape and taping my sticks before I even went to the rink. Like I was always that is the organization part for me, and the discipline was what it was all about, I think.
So you said that maybe you had some problems with ADHD or
I
focusing,
100
or
I
yeah.
100% have ADHD, yes.
How did that affect you? Because I know that like hockey really, when I was in my mid-teens, when I started to get serious about hockey, because I never wanted to play in the NHL either. I was quite
Yeah,
realistic that I was going to use, like I had this real, it was a game plan that my dad set out for me, probably from about 12, 13, 14 years old. He's like, why don't you go to the UK to play hockey? You got a British passport, go
yeah,
to university, get a degree, and use hockey as a way to develop your education and get a life,
absolutely,
in
yeah,
maybe as a teacher. So that was my game plan. And then when I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to at least try and make junior B hockey in
yeah,
Saskatoon. And so I started working out in the summers and I started really going hard. And I like there's just something shifted in me. But also I started to do better at school because I really struggled at school because
yeah,
I had a problem reading, like because of my eyes. I had to read one word at a time. I
yeah,
couldn't,
yeah,
so I got picked on, by teachers when I was really young. So I had these huge insecurities at school about, not trying so I wouldn't fail, and then just kind of bullshitting my way
yeah,
through. And
absolutely,
then all of a sudden, when I started getting serious about hockey, it gave me some purpose. And
yeah.
then my grades changed at school. So did that kind of, do you think, help you through school?
No, that didn't help me through school. I was an
Uh,
absolute terrible student.
yeah.
And I'm a teacher now, so I can reflect back. And I was high energy. I've got dyslexia as well as diagnosed at my first year at Winchester. So we could talk
Yeah.
about that later. So I've got dyslexia. I was high energy. I was probably a pain in the ass, to be honest with you.
Right.
And school wasn't a massive priority. I read a lot. I struggled to retain, but I read a lot as a kid.
Mm,
I didn't do homework. I messed around quite a bit. So hockey was my outlet really, and any sport
yeah.
was what I did. And it's just different now because I think with my boys, we're really focused on their education and we read with them every night. We make sure their homework's done,
Mm,
and it's just a different time really. It's just I would have been picked. I would have had it picked up if I was at school now. Um,
yeah.
and I know that now, but I've got the strategies so I can get through life really when it comes
Yeah.
to that stuff. But yeah, so no, I was just a terrible student, terrible.
Well, I'm saying that I was a bad student, but hockey helped me a little bit. That was my theory,
100,
but
100%, yeah,
that
yeah,
there we go. So
yeah.
hockey
That
did help you. Yeah.
yes, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let's see.
When did you decide, like my example for me, like about 14, 15 years old, I started to try a little bit harder at the bantam
Yeah,
age, and apply myself a little bit more. When did you know, like, okay, I'm actually going to start applying myself to hockey to try and at
yeah,
least get to college or something?
yeah. Probably be it would be a little bit later than you. I was when I was 15, I was affiliate, no, 15, 16, I was affiliated with the local junior D team. So I played like junior C. It's junior C now, but it was junior D back then. I started affiliating, playing quite a few games. And then I started training with the London Nationals, the junior B team. That coach was a previous coach of the Lucan junior D team in those glory years I was talking about before. So we always knew him. So I went to training camp with them. And I think when I was 16, I was the last cut. So I went back to midget. So I was 16. That's when I was. I was 16. So I was training twice a week with the junior B team, training with the junior D team, and playing midget hockey and junior D at the same time. That's when I kind of thought I'll probably not just play junior D for the rest of my life because that's all I thought I was ever going to do. Get an apprenticeship, play junior D just like all my mates, and that would have been that. But the following year, I was 16, turning 17. I was playing an exhibition game for St. Mary's, and there was a coach from Aurora down scouting another player. And long story short, I was signed then, and then I moved up there 2 weeks later. So it wasn't until I was 16, 17, and going away to play junior A, I thought, well, this is when we need to focus. So I never thought that was going to happen. That was a total off chance.
Did you just have a really great game or what?
Yeah, I had a fight, obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, so I did really well against their captain and Brad Selwood, who was a former Maple Leaf, was the coach in Aurora. He was down scouting another player, and he handed me an Aurora Tigers business card because obviously I was a minor, so he couldn't really say much. He goes, "Can you when you?" Dad wasn't there. Dad never missed any hockey, but Dad was having a company golf tournament at his house. He was having a big barbecue with his employees at home, and I went home and he thought I was full of baloney. He's like, "What's this?" Like we never. So we called him, and then within 2 weeks, I was moved up there, and that was it in the billet family, and that was it. Yeah,
What was that like for you, leaving the family home to go to a billet family?
it was a bit of a whirlwind at the time because I can't emphasize enough how much I was not going to be a hockey player. I was just going to play locally, and that was it. Like that was as far as that was ever going to go. So it was just like a whirlwind, and you get into a locker room with, you're 16 turning 17, you're in with all these junior A guys that have played for ages, and you're not even really like a hockey player. You were 2 weeks ago, you were a kid who played hockey, and then all of a sudden you're in with these hockey players and guys that are going to, guys that have university scouts looking at them, and guys come back down from the OHL, and you're just in this room of these hockey players. So that was quite a cool experience.
So this is like early 90s time, right? Am I right?
No, this is like 90, 98,
Okay, late 90s then. So
97, yeah.
now the role that you fit very well was a guy who could
Yeah,
handle himself. You're 6'4", you can move on
yeah,
the ice, and you can throw some punches. That role has evolved. It's changed a lot.
100%.
Um, so let's talk about when did you think, okay, this is this is a position I can fill. Like I'm good at this, and I'm gonna try to make a career out of it.
Yeah, I think right around that time, it was just those couple. I remember had a really good fight that same night, was against their 20-year-old captain. Do you know what I mean? So we had the cages on, and the cages came off, and it was, I did really well in that fight, and that's when and I'm left-handed as well, and that stuff I was always kind of intrigued with Bob Probert and Tony Twist and Stu Grimson. I always, but that's right when I thought, yeah, this is probably what's going to get me as far as it did. Right around that
Okay,
time.
and that's a perfect time to end the first period here.
Perfect.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. So you've one thing. This is what first period intermission. I asked all the guys, what was their intermission routine? What did you do between the periods?
I always shoulder pads off, shirt off, and skates loosened, because sometimes I didn't play a lot and sometimes I did. So I'd always have to reset my skates.
In the change room, did you see any other really bizarre, weird routines growing up or through your career?
No, you just have the odd guy that would maybe get like fully undressed, showered, and then back out if they didn't feel they were playing right. They would just take
Yeah,
everything off and reset. But no,
yeah.
not really. No, I had Nathan Rempel in London was really finicky with his sticks and skates and all sorts of stuff. He was the weirdest one, I think, with
Yeah.
his gear.
I don't think the guys would mind me saying this, but on the Isle of Wight, there was only you remember how small that one changing room was. I think by the time you were there, you may have put the two changing rooms into one, but there was
Oh,
the home changing room used to be one changing room, and then
all
it used
right.
to be the refs room. So it's a small room. So it was only about half the guys would ever go in that. The other guys would go out the exit and have a cigarette. So
Oh God.
yeah, so that was back in the day. I won't name names, but we'll say half the team was outside having a dart, and the other
Yeah,
half
it
were sitting
surprised me.
inside. Yeah, yeah,
I remember we'll get into it, but I remember walking into that rink the first time, and holy mackerel, what
yeah.
a place.
What a place. Let's get into it now. Let's get into the second period, okay? And let's talk about how you ended up in the UK.
Yeah, so I played 5 years at home in the Central League and the United League, and then I just always wanted to play in Europe as a kid. As a kid, I always wanted to play in Europe. I like the stuff on the pants, the advertisements on the pants, and I always a massive fan of the Spangler Cup at Christmas time. I always loved watching that. So always wanted to play in Europe. And I was skating in the summer. Steve Ruchin used to put a skate on. He used to play for Anaheim. So every summer we used to skate with him. It was with the goalie Jeff Hackett was the initial one to do it. Then Steve Ruchin took it over with Jason Williams, who played for Detroit, and Andy McDonald, who played in Anaheim as well. And I was always the worst player there, but I was always welcome to skate. And there was a player there named Trevor Gallant who played in Nottingham briefly. I asked him, I said, how do you get over here? And he said, the only league you're going to be able to go to is England, obviously because of the physical play. So I started emailing some teams. I emailed Belfast and I think Cardiff, but Dennis Maxwell ended up calling me from London, and I hadn't contacted him. So he must have just heard through the grapevine that I was looking to go over. And that's how I got over. I got a call from Dennis, and then we had a chat, and that's how it happened.
And that was with the London Racers at the time,
It
and
was,
yeah.
yeah, the second year of existence.
And where, because I remember the London Knights went down and they were playing in out of the arena. Where did the London Racers play out of?
Lee Valley,
Lee Valley. Okay.
yeah, and that was
So what
the
was?
issue.
Yeah, I mean that'll well, we that rink's gone now. There's the new Twin
Yeah,
Pad is up there, so it's a pretty cool spot. But what was it like for you, going from Canada into London, which I always will say London is my spiritual home. It's a place
Yeah,
I know it like the back of my hand. I love it. Living in Soho, it's one of the best years of my life. Sober years too.
yeah, good.
But yeah. But a young guy from Canada going over and playing with the London Racers, it must have been quite an experience for you.
It was I just remember how foreign it felt. Like it just felt like another planet coming over. Um,
Mhm.
it just did feel it's weird because now when I go home, I feel it's weird at home a bit, you know. I'm sure you experienced that as well. So it just everything was weird. You're on the wrong side of the road. The fridge in your flat is, 2 feet tall.
Small.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's cold and hot taps, and like I don't
yeah.
know. It's just you'll remember what it's like. It's just so bizarre coming over. The hockey was great, obviously. Dennis Maxwell was really good with me, and everything was perfect in London. Like there was no issues with gear or payment or anything. We had beautiful brand new cars when we got here. Um, the rink was just horrendous to play, and we all made do. Don't get me wrong, we made do, and we had a tough team, and we had lots of fun. But I just remember how foreign everything felt and so tight, in London, everything's so close together. And me coming from a, a small village, it
Where
was
did
it
you
was
live?
different. We lived in South Woodford the first year. South
Yeah,
Woodford out the Central Line. Yeah.
I lived in South Woodford, so I
Oh,
know
did you?
North.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So we
yeah,
lived
yeah.
there the first. We lived there the no. We lived in Wanstead the first year.
Oh, I like
So
Wanstead. That's
yeah, it
far.
was it was really nice there. Yeah, we had nice
Yeah,
flats there, and then the second year was South Woodford. That's what it was.
yeah. But London is obviously always struggled in the top leagues because of housing.
Yes.
That was obviously a big issue. And then I imagine you with budgets and stuff and not being able to get many people into Lee Valley, it was never going to be viable, was it?
No, it was never ever going to work there. I think, I've heard this story a few times since I've been over here, is that they had plans for a new rink, but then the Olympics got granted for the Summer Olympics was it 2010? So that was
Well,
obviously 12, yeah, 2012, sorry. So this is like 2005, 2006. And then those plans put a dent into any potential rink being built or anything. So that's
yeah,
just
no,
what I've heard.
my heart still would love an elite hockey team running out of London. I don't know
Yeah,
if I think it will have to have a purpose built place because I don't think
yeah,
it'll operate out of the places that have right now. But
no,
I always do imagine somewhere like around Earl's Court or something like that they will build something. But
yeah,
because that would just be perfect. It would be a perfect area like
yeah,
Hammersmith Way, but it's just
yeah,
not the land for it,
no.
right?
No,
But
it was cool to play there. Like especially as a first impression of coming over. It was great to be able to go out for the day and do what you wanted. It was great
yeah,
there.
yeah. And then you ended up in Newcastle. How did that happen?
Right when we folded, actually, when London folded the following
Well, let's
November.
go back. So I want to go back. London, Dennis Maxwell, a guy can handle himself as well. And you said you had a tough team. What was it? What was that? How did that team do in those leagues over the year that the time that you were there?
Yeah, we were like a 500 hockey team the whole way through. We didn't have a massive player budget, that's for sure. So our bottom end was not very good. Our British talent were young, like Mark Thomas, who went on to do great things in Sheffield and become quite an established player. He was like 18 or 19 years old. Mark Thomas was the same. So we had a really young British contingent that
Mm,
obviously wasn't competing with the Ashley Tates of the world at that time. We had just solid, tough teams, just really worked hard, and we had a lot of rough stuff. That's for sure.
yeah. Okay. So now, how'd you get up to Newcastle?
So Newcastle was we once we folded. Newcastle's tough guy at the time. They were releasing him, so it's just the timing just worked out exactly right. So I just went straight up right as we folded. Settled in Newcastle. We had a good team that year. We finished second in the league and won the playoffs. So it was immediately a good choice to go straight up. It was good, really good.
So now you're going to, a place where you weren't getting a lot of fans to all of a sudden Newcastle and which is in the area that is a hockey hotbed.
Yeah, it is.
Some
Yeah.
amazing talent that's come out of there. Was Lobby paying for you guys then?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I still keep in touch with Lobby. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We had a
I'm
lot.
trying to get him on this, so I'm going to send him this. Tell him to jump on here. He's sending me all these like kind of cryptic messages on Facebook about, should I do it and why should I
I'll
do it?
message him after.
Yeah,
I'll
message him
message him
after.
after. Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah.
yeah, so I'll message him straight after we're done. I'll tell him to get on. So yeah, so we had a really good British contingent there. So we had Shuggy Johnson, Mike Tasker, Jonathan Weaver. So just great guys. We're a working team as well, steady team. Paul Ferron was obviously on the team, quite tough. Payette was there. We were a very tough team. I played for some really tough teams while I've been over here.
Yeah. Well, the guys that you mentioned, I mean, I would have really enjoyed watching that hockey.
Yeah, that they were a good. Like, we were a good team, and Wilson was still
Yeah.
playing defense. Like he was quite a good player as well at that time. We just really stuck into a system and a proper system, and we beat teams we probably shouldn't have beat the whole way through.
So, and I got to say, two amazing cities like London and Newcastle, great cities to hang out.
Oh yeah, well, we did a lot of hanging out in Newcastle, that's for sure. And then the
Yeah.
next year we finished like eighth or ninth, so it just goes to show that that's a tough city to stay focused in.
Yeah. Some great stories, I imagine,
Yeah.
when probably not for the podcast.
No, definitely not.
No. And then you ended up in Sheffield, and that's the year that I saw you
Yeah.
play. It was my first exposure to the Elite Hockey League, and I noted it had changed a bit. I mean, that was when like I was away from hockey from the end of the Super League. I went back to Canada for a bit, and I did some traveling, and then I came back, and then it obviously went back on the Sky, and then the game started to change. Then I
It
noticed.
did, yeah, yeah.
How did that affect you?
I don't think it had totally changed by then, so there was still room for guys like me. Sheffield wasn't a great experience for me. I was released in January or Feb, I can't remember. So it wasn't I don't hold many great memories from there, to be honest with you, just because of how things unfolded there. It was
Mhm.
good while I was there, but it was just a bit sour ending really. But it was good to play for a big team like that, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then you went back to, I think you had a season back in North America.
I did, yeah. I went to go play in which was the International League by then, but it was just the old United League. So I went to
Yeah.
Bloomington and played for a few months, and that was cool because I hadn't been. I think I'd been over here for 5 years already, so it was cool to go back and to see how things are run back there still. And it was run a bit more professional even then.
Yeah.
So traveling properly, sleeper buses, being fed per diem. It wasn't the NHL, obviously. Don't get me wrong, but it was cool to go back and experience that again because sometimes it can be quite Mickey Mouse over here.
Yeah. Well, as in anywhere, but I mean,
Yeah,
and then you end up coming back to the UK.
yeah.
There's obviously you live here now. There was a calling for you to come back. How did that work out?
Yeah, so Rachel and I have been together since I played in Newcastle. So I always had wanted to come back, obviously, because we were together. So I spoke to Ryan Aldridge, who is a great guy, and then I got the university package put in the contract for Winchester. So that's what got me back, because I obviously, as we were talking previously, I had no education, so I needed to find a plan. So that was the route for after hockey, that's for sure.
And that was you. So you had a season in Basingstoke first, right?
I did, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I finished
Yeah.
my first year of uni. Then Basingstoke dropped from the Elite League to the EPL, and Steve Morey was the coach. He kept the sponsorship going with Winchester, really for me, which was fantastic. And then obviously I wasn't going to be one of his four imports, which was absolutely fine. So that's how I started looking for jobs. I was offered the Bracknell job at the time, but they had some money problems and I didn't really want to do it because of what they had been through the previous couple of years. And then I spoke to Steve Price on the Isle of Wight and Jeff and got that done.
Now, had you been on the Isle of Wight before you signed for them?
No, so
Okay.
I remember I was still in Basingstoke because the university year hadn't finished. So a few of us got moved from our own places. We got moved into a shared house, the three uni guys that were still left after the season ended. And I remember speaking to Jeff and Steve on the phone in the back garden. I remember, and they said, "Oh, you need to come over and have a look." And I remember going over. Rachel and I went over for the first time, and I do remember that.
Did they have plexiglass then?
Uh, did they have just on the ends? So I remember
Yeah.
walking. I remember walking in the rink. I'll never forget it. and just seeing it. And I remember like walking down the right hand side, as you would know, to the locker room. And I think a public session was on, so like the disco lights and everything were on. And then I went into the locker room, and it was just it's just classic. But I'll tell you what, it took me. I think the first year we were there, I don't know what we finished, maybe sixth or seventh, and went to the playoff final and lost. The second year we won the league, and it was always tough recruiting over there. But once guys got over there, they loved it.
Yeah.
It was just
I
getting them.
Yeah, it was get well, I was there. I was hired before the rink opened because
Okay.
they needed a Zamboni driver, and I was driving a Zamboni in Milton Keynes because Milton
Okay.
Keynes had opened up. I was the Zamboni
Yeah.
driver there, and then a guy named Steve Rattle was opening up the Isle of Wight with this company called Gull, and he's like, "Look, I need a Zamboni driver and an assistant manager." And I was married to a professional figure skater at the time. We just got
Okay.
married. Well, no, we weren't married. We were engaged, and who was in Milton Keynes. And so we moved to the island together. So she was a professional figure skater. I was driving the Zamboni, and they said, "Will you help out with the hockey team?" And then it was the Solent Vikings.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now, I know that rink inside out because there was me and a guy named Andy Nolan, and we were just kids. Like I was 18, 19, and he would have been just a year or two younger than me, a year younger than me. And we were working in there at that rink 24 hours a day, putting up the silver tinfoil ceiling, like
Yeah.
putting in seats.
Yeah.
We would help putting in the boards. We were like drilling holes through floors to put pipes for toilets. Like we were and like just working to try to get this place open. So like literally blood, sweat, and tears of mine
Yeah.
have gone into that arena. And I was just, and I was there with our first imports, Sean Murphy and Dave McGann, and we just got absolutely slaughtered by everybody. And then I played up in Sheffield one game, and they asked me to go up there, which is the I had to take that.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
again,
Yeah.
the island took me back, and then we had a couple of really successful years there when I played with like Dan Sweeney
Yeah.
and those guys. And everyone talks about that as a really special time on the island, but to see the island going through what it's going through now, and you playing there for like 7 seasons, what were your memories there, and then how did you become kind of like the life? Like, how did you start to feel towards the island?
Oh, it was definitely a second home, second home for us. So we made it. We always made a routine of it. So Rachel and I would take the Saturday car ferry over. So it was always Gun Wharf for lunch and a coffee, and then head over. We had lots of good nights out there. It just was a really special place to play, and I think that the people that have played there will know that. Like my three best mates are from here. They're guys that I coached, and we still keep in touch and we see each other often. So, and you would have actually played with Ben Painter's dad, Matt. You
Mm-hmm.
know Matt. So I hang
Yeah,
out with
yeah.
his boy. I hang out with his boy quite a bit. So those friendships have always lasted from the island, and those are the memories that we all talk about. Those are the fun times, really fun. And we won. We always won. We always had good teams. Um, I don't even know how many play. We won one. We ended up winning the league once in the playoffs once, but I think we went to 5 or 6 playoff finals. Just could never beat Chelmsford type of thing. So we were always successful. We always played right through the season. Really, really tough at home to beat all the time because it was just such a fun rink to play in.
Oh yeah, I loved playing there, and it was something for me. Like I started going to Winchester from the island. I lived on the island, and I would commute across
Oh,
to
did you?
Winchester. And then finally, my third year, I played for Guildford. So I
Yeah,
was going from the island to Guildford to Winchester in this kind of little triangle
yeah.
of travel, which was, what I look back at it, Jared, going to university and playing hockey and doing all the traveling, it was like something that it was just easy to do. I don't know why. Getting up at 5 in the morning to go get the ferry over to Portsmouth and then get on a
Yeah,
train or drive a car to Winchester and then Winchester to Guildford for practice. It was just something that was just in me. I just did it.
yeah.
But I think it's going to university, and Winchester is an extremely special place too. That campus is amazing,
Yeah.
and you did a PGC there, right? So you're
Oh no, I did the sports studies degree, and then
okay.
I did a it's not I didn't do a PGC. I did what was called a GTP. So
Mhm.
I did a GTP at Solent University, Southampton,
Okay, so 3 years at
the
Winchester, and then
Winchester.
yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that like for so people who really want to try, I want to understand what it's like to play hockey and to go to university and to have a family and to show up. What
Yeah.
was it like for you? What are the memories you have of doing all of that stuff?
Yeah, so we didn't have kids then, so it was the classic go to school during the day, and your Tuesday, Thursday training, as you'll probably remember, would have been the same probably when you played Tuesday and Thursday at 9 o'clock, and it was that I can't remember the exact time, 10 past 11 ferry home,
Yeah,
that sort
yeah.
of thing. So it was like I think we even did like a 6:30 ferry over for a 9 o'clock game or something, or I can't remember what we would do for training. Sorry. So it was that 3 times a week, commuting back and forth to the island. Quite often there was probably 10 or 12 of us going over, so we'd all meet at the ferry port, all have a coffee together, chill out, then get on the boat. And as you'd probably remember, there's some rocky boat rides over there.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes in the dead of winter, get over there with just everybody. I'd be just looking around the team and in the locker room, and it'd be green faces from that boat ride. So yeah, you do your studies all day and then just head over really, and then you'd be late back, just like you said. You might have to be up early for uni the next day. So it was a good routine, and just like you said, you just kind of got on with it, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah. Out of the places that you played most of your time on the island, but then comparing it to the time in London and Newcastle, it's hard to say. What was your favorite?
There's different there's favorite all three of those are my favorite in different ways. I think London was, first of all, was awesome. We had such a fun team, hockey wise. It was like we had hockey players there. It was, Eric Cairns came over from the NHL that year. We were there, and Scotty Nickel, and we were so tough, and we just from a hockey standpoint, and the newness of coming back to, coming into England and it being fresh. That part always sticks out in my head, and the success we had in Newcastle is another favorite place for me, and the off ice stuff that we got up to and how much fun we had as a team, just meeting at the pub after training and going out and enjoying the nightlife there was great, and the success we had on the ice. So those are my fondest memories as well of winning with Newcastle. And then the island was different. It was a different phase of my career, where it was just a lot of fun playing hockey. There was no stress for me. I didn't have to fight anybody. You're scoring goals and having fun and enjoying it. So there's three different teams that I really can't pick an exact favorite, because they're all different, and why I enjoyed them so much in different ways.
What about your most memorable times, like in terms of the league in Newcastle, but the continued success on the island? Would you have a favorite moment,
Yeah,
or like?
definitely. Yeah, when we won the league, and there's three that stick out. We won the league my second year on the island, which was fantastic, obviously, because we had dropped league, so we were in the third division then, which was absolutely fine. So we brought the island some success that they hadn't seen in a long time, because they did struggle in the EPL. So it was cool to just get back and win games and win the league there. So that memory was amazing. And then the second one was winning the playoffs, because we hadn't done that in 4 or 5 chances, and it was just every season it seemed we'd get to the final and lose, and we finally had won it. And then probably my ultimate memory that I'll never forget is my last game that I played on the island, and it was known I was going to stop playing, and the rink was packed, and just everything was great about that evening, and I'll never forget it. So those are the memories that I share, that I saved from there.
I think what's like, you played in Sheffield. I played in Sheffield. I think the largest crowd I ever played in Sheffield, it was like 10,500 when
Yeah,
they had seats on the black wall.
yeah.
And so I played in front of 10,500 people in their first season in Sheffield. And I played in front of a packed Isle of Wight. I don't even know what the capacity of the island is. I think it's around 1,000 or 1,200 or something.
Yeah, a little bit less.
But
I think it's, yeah.
but when they've actually let everybody in that could come in, and then people standing all around by the
Yeah,
drinks machines, and like
yeah, that's
literally
right.
they're all the way to the back. And both are completely different, but there was something special about the island, because it was like this little community of people, and the rink meant so much to people. In Sheffield you had football, you had other
That's right.
sports, whereas the island, it was just all about hockey.
It was, yeah.
And just thinking about it now, like stepping on that ice with the disco ball and the lights going and the DJ booth in the corner,
That's
and
right,
then
yeah.
having to take like only 3 or 4 strides and you're across the rink, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's a special
It,
place,
oh,
isn't it?
it is, and it is that it is that smell we come back to, that smell you get in that rink. It's the exact same. So there's just so much more to it. It's not. It wasn't even about the hockey team. It was about the rink. It was about the people that did the public session and were there for anything they had going on the island. It was that was the hub of the community, and that's what makes it so sad now. And I think that's why I respected it so much, because when I was a kid, our rink was our hub of the community. It had the gym on the side, and they had the local swimming pool. Where everything happened around my rink growing up, and that's the same on the island. Those people that you saw come and watch the hockey game were the same people that would be there for public session or just hanging around up in the bar. So it is sad what's happened, but those are the memories that I have. I used to take my oldest boy is 11 now, and from when he was probably 2, 3, and maybe 4, right around that age, I was taking him an hour early to go to the island to have an hour on the ice with him. So he was skating on that rink every Saturday before our games. So those are the memories from that place, and it's just such a shame what's happened. I'd probably still be
It,
doing
yeah, it is.
it.
I think, well, I need to do a whole episode about the Isle of Wight rink,
Yeah,
and
you do.
yeah, I do. But Jared, I'm going to end the second period there, buddy.
Yep.
And we're gonna jump right into the third. And as I say this to all the time, the name of this is called Repurpose, and the purpose is to talk about the early days and the
Yeah.
pro career and stuff. But I really, and again, I say this all the time to people. I really struggled when I stopped playing hockey. I was playing in Guildford in the late 90s, and I was on TV on Sky Sports. I'd started my own production company in Chelsea Harbor in London. I had a
Yeah.
flat on the river in Chiswick. I drove a flash Porsche, and I shopped on Savile Row. I had all this stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I had to make this choice: end my hockey career and just dive into
Yeah.
TV and this entrepreneur lifestyle. And once the hockey went, all of a sudden I had a green light to kind of do what I want to do, because I never drank. I never
Yeah.
did drugs. And when I drank, I mean, I'd have a beer a week. I was not a big drinker
Yeah.
because alcoholism was in my family and I just didn't want to be part of it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was hanging out in Soho, and lo and behold, cocaine and martinis come out. And it filled that gap, this little gap that I had, this hole in me that I
Yeah.
remember. I can look back, and it was when I stopped playing hockey, this little void in me. And then alcohol took that kind of void away, and it
Yeah.
made me kind of feel like I could fit into a crowd again. Um, so I really struggled. I don't know what it's been like for you. We're going to get into it.
Yeah.
But when you decided, okay, on that game on the Isle of Wight, that this is going to be your last game, and you've got your education, and you've got a small family, and you're going to hang them up. What was that like for you? And well, let's go into, when did you make the decision that it was going to be your last game?
I think probably that season. So I think it was 2015. I think I just knew because it was the classic. I missed playing full time, but this working, and I was teaching by then, and I had 2 kids. So I was literally leaving at bedtime on a Tuesday and Thursday, and I was gone the whole weekend from 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So it just kind of got to the point where I needed to. It was what really pushed it on was that Rachel started. She's a dentist by trade, still is a dentist, but she does facial aesthetics out of the house. So she does all the facial stuff. So it was kind of that she had just started that company. So she was working 3 days as a dentist at that time and trying to get her own business off the ground. Uh, that needed to take priority all of a sudden because we had been together for so many years where it was me being away for every weekend to do hockey and through the week, and that helped but I was like 36 years old, so like it was time. I was getting out of the car after. You'll know what this is like because you had driven to so many games. I never took a bus when I played on the Isle of Wight. I drove to all the games because I lived over here, and I get out of the car, my hips are seized up, and you get home from Invicta at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday night, and you're up at 6 for work, and it's just not. It just comes to a point where it's not worth it. The financial payout is not worth it by the end, for me playing at that level. So I think I squeezed as much as possible out. But with the kids growing up, and I missed Dougie scored his first goal for Basingstoke when he was 5, and I missed that game because I was at a game. I was coaching in Streatham. I did 3 years at Streatham after the Isle of Wight coaching, and I missed his first goal because I was coaching, and I just thought this isn't worth it really. So the combination of my body being done, because I never worked out when I played at that level, so I wasn't really that fit. Rachel's new business starting up, and the kids growing up really is how it all needed to happen. But I think I had a good transition, and I think about this a lot because I think about the guys that have had struggles that play in the minors or play over here, and when their career ends, it just ends. I had like a gradual exit. So I went from the Elite League to the NIHL and played 7 seasons, 8 seasons there. So that was kind of like a gradual dip out of the game. And then I had 2.5 seasons at Streatham on the bench. I just kind of feel like I had this gradual exit from the game, if that makes sense. I think that's helped me. I think that's massively helped me because by the end, I was like, Streatham was a 2-hour drive for training on a weekday, and then the 2 games was another 8 hours in the car. So I just kind of had enough, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you also as a guy who planned it out, right? So the education was going to be while you were playing, so that you did have
Yeah,
a career after hockey. So you were quite conscious, as I was too, and I ended up with a career, but
yeah,
there was still something missing, like as I talked about when I ended. So you were conscious of the fact that hockey career is not going to last forever.
yeah,
How would you suggest it to guys to make sure that all of a sudden, like you say, like for some people it's just over,
yeah.
right?
That's right. Yeah, and then they're
And
home.
and the struggles are immense.
Yeah,
I mentioned the other day that there's a guy back in Canada. And he's a little bit older than me, and he played NHL. And he's like, Nick, half the guys that I know that played the game are doing really well, good
yeah. That's right.
careers, they're
Yeah,
entrepreneurs. Because but literally the other half are really really struggling with
yeah,
alcohol, with drugs, with
yeah,
women. They're reaching out for something, and it's becoming really detrimental to their lives. So we talk about it, people are
yeah,
aware of it, and people are like you, which I'm so glad that you did. And I've seen your journey, and I'm always like,
yeah.
I'm a big cheerleader for what you did. And then you talked about
Thanks.
university, and you talked about like life after hockey, because I think people need to hear it here.
Yeah, they do. I think the big thing is with my my exit from hockey is that it kind of looks like it was planned with the uni stuff, but I think it's really important to know that without Ryan Aldridge's phone call to ask me to go play in Basingstoke and offering me like that uni degree was only offered because he didn't have enough money to pay me, so I had to take a lesser wage. And so that was just like an add-in. Um, and I think it's just really important to know that I didn't have a plan. Like I had no plan. So I was like 28 years old, and you'll see it a lot back home. And I bet you if you did a little bit of research behind it, you'll find the clever guys will come and play pro hockey for 2 or 3 years and they go home because they've got a uni degree or they've got a plan. It's guys like me that played 10 years that had no plan. That's why I kept coming back and playing because I had nothing else at home. I had no plan. So I think from the outside it looks like I had this great plan to go to uni, and it has worked out well for me. Don't get me wrong, but I think important moving forward is that guys need to have a plan because you get caught in this cycle of you get home in the summer, you get another contract that just gets you enough money to get through that season in the summer, and then you just do it again and again and again because you've got no plan. And I think it's important to get a plan as you're playing. I think that's the biggest thing that we can do.
I think I really want to note this is that, like, when you're playing pro hockey in North America or in some of the leagues in Europe, you're getting some good wages. You're getting some
Yeah,
good,
yeah,
whereas in England, you're mostly just kind of cost of living expenses. You're not making a lot of money to, as you say, to save away to have a pension for
that's
life
right.
after
Oh
hockey.
no, no.
So, but I want to kind of get into why guys do it. Like,
Yeah,
why go through all of that stuff with the late drive back from an away game on a Sunday, not getting home till 1 or 2 in the morning, then getting up for
yeah,
work at 7 or 6 for you, 6, 7 or
yeah,
8 o'clock, getting up.
yeah.
Why do guys do it? And I
Well, I
think
think
this is
yeah, I think guys do it because it's all they know. Like you got to remember, like when I was coaching on the Isle of Wight, my budget was £2,000 a week for the whole team. So we got guys doing it for 40 quid a week. You got guys doing it for 100 pound a week. You got guys doing it for 200 pound a week. Like it's not, they do it for the love of the game. There's no question. That's why they do it. And it's not, it's no other reason than that. They've done it since they were kids and they want to play the best hockey they can. And I think it's just, you know, in the third division, it's just petrol money. It is literally just petrol money. You know, you can get some better money as you obviously move up the leagues, but until when you're in the elite league, you can get full-time money. And I'm sure there's still some, you know, second division EPL guys that are getting good enough money to make a go of it. But it is strictly for the love of the game and just enjoying that team stuff.
That's what I want to try to get across. Really, is that
Yeah,
you know the why they do it is the love of the game, and I think that this is
100%.
what fans probably don't understand that are listening to this is this pull for that those connections, those bonds you have, the stories on the bus,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
banter in the changing rooms. Like
yeah,
it's the constant thread through anybody who's ever played the game in an organized level or fun level of the stuff
yeah,
that goes on in the changing room and those connections you make with guys like you say, like I can name all the guys on the Isle of Wight, in the 93-94 season. We went undefeated. It was
yeah, yeah,
unbelievable. And like they we talk on Facebook. They know about my story.
yeah.
The vulnerable messages that guys share out about the challenges that they've had, they would never share that to anybody else.
No,
But
no, of
it's
course not.
because of those connections that you make in those changing rooms, and to me, that's the why that guys do it. It's
It,
beyond money. It's
it
it's
is
purely
so.
about brotherhoods.
It is, yeah, and just being part of something obviously as well, and it keeps you focused, especially for young guys. It's keeping you focused in your early 20s, and there's a lot of guys that sacrifice over here to play in that third division. They sacrifice a lot. They've generally all got decent jobs, and they're still doing it just for the sake of doing it. And it just with me, it just came to a point where it wasn't worth it anymore for me,
Mhm.
and that's partially why I had stopped. And it just, like I said before, it gave me a nice gradual. Um, Exit from the game, and I haven't, and I don't know with my case, it might be just a bit different because I've got the three boys and we're busy with football and stuff at the minute. So like we are really busy with football. Like we've got three kids and there's five teams they play for. So I don't have a lot of dead time thinking, oh, I wish I was playing hockey, on this Saturday and then driving home at 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't ever think that.
Yeah, there's a soft spot for any hockey fan and also teammate for the guys who drop the gloves, and you were one of them. And there tends to be the guys like you tend to be very well liked in changing rooms and with fans and stuff. So I imagine for that, there's something that guys again miss, and we've known tragedies, we've known guys
Yeah,
who've passed because of tragedies, and they were guys who were very physical and strong and resilient and real tough men.
that's right.
um, and they really struggled when that role was gone, and for you, did you miss that part of it? Do you miss the connections that you had with with fans and with other teammates because you did fulfill that role on your team?
I do think about it a lot more now. I don't know. I don't know how much I did like to fight. Don't get me wrong. I did like that combat. I did like that, you know, especially when I played over here because I fought a lot of guys that had played in the NHL or the American League, and I hadn't reached that level before. So I was always keen to test myself against those guys. But I don't know if I miss it that much. I really can't. I don't know what I miss about it. I don't dwell on it a lot, but a lot of people ask me now that I'm at the age that I am, do you miss it? And my answer is often I miss when I played full time. I miss that lack of responsibility, I think, and just, going to the rink in the morning and coming home and chilling out and that kind of freedom I probably miss a bit. And it's different when you're with a team every day compared to when I played on the Isle of Wight, you see someone 3 or 4 times a week. When you're playing full time, you see these guys 7 days a week and you're with them all the time. And, your flat's next door to all the other guys and you're hanging out and that sort of stuff I do miss. As for the game itself, I do sometimes think about trying to find somewhere to play once a week or getting the kid out. But that's just a recent thing that started popping up. But I don't miss the fighting. I'll be honest with you.
It
I do
hurt.
It did, and I don't know what that's going to lead to me later, later in life. So I do think about that a bit, but I try to be as healthy as possible for the most part. But yeah, so no, I don't miss fighting. I wouldn't go out now looking for an
But the
adrenaline
fight,
rush.
but the fighters were looked at a certain way, and I don't want to say you're put
Yeah,
up on pedestals or anything like
no, I
that. But
get that. Yeah,
so, do you remember being looked at like that by your
yeah,
teammates and by your fans?
yeah, I do. But I also remember the other stuff with certain places where I didn't get a lot of ice time and wasn't really respected for that. I think back to coaches that appreciated what I had done and treated me really well for it. Like Dennis Maxwell, for instance, I played a lot under Dennis. I played a lot for him. And I've got a junior coach that I always have fond memories of guys that kind of just took care of you. And I think about that a lot now with my kids in football. I look at their coaches. I think, do they have their best interests at heart? And I know that's the sort of stuff I think about. As for your original question about the pedestal type thing, yeah, I do remember that stuff. Yes, and I do enjoy those memories.
What were some of them?
Well, I just think just that. Well, you know what it's like. You have a fight and you come back into the locker room after the intermission, and guys are giving you a tap, and the coach just says in front of great job, Corny. That really got us going. That sort of stuff. I miss, and you miss I didn't score a lot of goals, but you miss scoring a goal and guys being like surprised and happy for you. That sort of
Yeah.
stuff, or a tap after you've had a fight, or even if you just had to go speak to someone. I've always was really protective, and I've always had. I don't know where that came from. I'm sure it's come from my dad, but I was always protective of my teammates, and that was the thing I was most proud of.
I imagine the fans on the Isle of Wight really warmed to you as well.
Yeah, it was a different time. Yeah, definitely. I had only had a handful of fights in 7 or 8 years. I didn't have maybe a couple of season. I didn't have a lot of fights, and it was they were great. I think just knowing that you had their support. That wasn't the tough guy thing wasn't really a thing for me, but it was just building a team that they could be proud of. I was always
Mm.
conscious of having a good, Isle of Wight team, and that's what I probably think they remember the most in winning and enjoying hockey again. Because they had some lean years before that, not due to the coaching or the ownership previous to me, but due to
Mm.
being in a league that they shouldn't have been in at that time. That's why they were lean years for them. But that's what I hope they remember the most is that we put good teams on the ice for a decent budget and made that team sustainable for years.
Throughout this whole thing, I've been looking behind over your shoulders, and I've been looking at the Vipers and the Racers jerseys. Um, like to have them on the wall. Why?
So those two, I've got some other ones upstairs. Actually, a Memphis River Kings one from the year before I came over. I've got Laredo Bucks when I played in the Central League, and I've got a Flint Generals one. They're upstairs, and they just stay in the closet. But these two, the London one here, these two jerseys both came from Rick Strang. Do you know Rick Strang at all? So he was with us in London. He was our medic, but he wasn't just a medic. He stitched me up a few times, but he's a friend. And he's a guy that one of the first people I met when I came to England, still keep in touch with him to this day. He was our medic, but he was also, he sorted everything out with the team. He was like the guy who just did everything. And that jersey was worn in Cardiff the last game we played in London. And it's got a little, the writing like on a football jersey, the last game type thing and the date. And he gave me that jersey. So that was, obviously representing London on my first ever team. And then Rick, which is unbelievable, he bought that Vipers jersey in the auction. So he paid a lot of money for that shirt at the time. And we've done some jersey swapping for those jerseys because I gave him a San Angelo one and I think an Aurora Tigers one because he's a big jersey collector. He's got a massive collection. So he actually got that for me. So that was the playoff championship shirt I was wearing when we won the championship.
It's obvious that they're on their wall. You were a hockey player. Some say
Yeah.
once always a hockey player, always a hockey player. How important is it for you to still have some identity involved in
Yeah.
with the game?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. It's hard because I feel it slipping. I feel it is slipping, that identity. And I think the teaching thing helps that I had something else to go to. So, for instance, when Dougie was born, Rachel wanted me to put on the birth certificate. She said it'd be cool if you put professional ice hockey player. And I didn't. I put teacher. I was too modest to put that. And I was just always a hockey player. And I still get people asking, I know I've heard you've got some videos on YouTube and things like that. And I do get that every new football team we come to, you'll get some question like that, and it's probably on a weekly basis, really, that I don't advertise it, but it usually gets out. So I do like having the chat about that the odd time. That identity is slipping, and my association with English ice hockey is slipping as well, because I don't follow it as I probably should. Ben Painter is coaching in Streatham, really good friend of mine. So I speak to him every week and I'll ask him how they've got on and what's happened in the league. But as for the Elite League and the second division, I don't have a clue what's going on.
Hmm. I feel so old, dude, when you talk about Ben Painter, because
he was a baby.
He was literally this big.
I
His
know.
dad brings him into the rink, and
I know.
and at the time you're like, oh, Matt just had a kid, and Matt was a kid himself.
I know.
All of a sudden it's Ben Painter, and he's this
Well,
big lad, and
he's a lot younger than me, but they're just they're guys that I've just always kept in touch with. So it's good to have those relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Like, you still have the relationships, and I'm interested now. Like, the whole idea of you fulfilled a purpose as a hockey player. You a role that not a lot of guys want to have, and then all of a sudden, as a leader and a coach and a guy who's building teams on the island, did you feel like you had purpose as a hockey player? And then have you noticed, like as you say, you're maybe the identity is slipping a little bit, but have you this role as a teacher now, has that, do you think, softened this idea of losing the purpose as a hockey player to now you're an educator, and a leader that way?
It 100% has. It is something that it's something that has been difficult over the years without the academic background. Like I said before, I do not have the academic background. So it's something I've had to really sink my teeth in to learn about curriculum and learn how to be a teacher. I trained in PE, so I went from PE to not. I never teach PE. I don't teach PE. So it is crazy to think a guy that left home at 16 with really, I've got a high school diploma, but I had to sit and do my GCSEs at 30 years old in a school that I was working in at the time, in the back of the hall with the 16-year-old kids, because I had no qualifications. So I had to do that before I got my teaching qualification. So it's crazy to think what I've had to learn, how I've had to always have an open mindset and be reflective to become the teacher that I am, because I didn't have the foundation to become. I was no English student, or do you know what I mean? I was a hockey player, so I had to kind of to learn all this stuff myself.
I think it's awesome what you've done, dude. Really
Yeah,
do.
thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm gonna end the third period there because that's 20 minutes. But I do have like an overtime question, I think. I do. You alluded to this idea of identity slipping,
Yeah.
as a hockey player slipping. And it almost brings about this kind of feeling of a bit of a sadness. Like, it's like, holy crap, you know what I mean? Like this thing's, and how old are you now?
I'm 43.
43 years old. I'm wondering, like, Jared, do you ever lay in bed or go for a walk or do something and just have these pangs of like, holy shit, I really miss hockey, and I'm kind of almost forgetting of the fact that I was a hockey player?
No, I don't. I don't do that. But the one thing I've noticed just recently is that I don't watch any hockey anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't. I listen to some podcasts. Like I listen to 32 Thoughts, the Sportsnet podcast, and I kind of have this. And I was just starting to think the other day. I walk the dog every morning right now, and I was thinking, why am I listening to this podcast when I have no idea who's playing tonight or who played last night and what they're even talking about? It's almost like routine that I have to have, excuse me, hockey things going on in my head where I don't need to. So we watch football in this house. I've got three boys that are massive football fans. We watch football Saturdays and Sundays. I probably know more about what's going on in the Premier League now than what's going on in the NHL. But when I'm by myself in the car or walking the dog, I've got an NHL podcast on. And I find that really, this has just come up the last week or so that I've started to really think, why are you listening to that? But I think it's just trying to keep some sort of hockey going into my body. I don't know. I've got no idea. It's really weird.
It feel because like me, I don't know, like maybe you're just at that age, and I'm just trying to sense it with you because it does feel like something that you're in this kind of space of like, this was a huge part of my life, since I was 16 years old. Now I'm a teacher, I'm a dad to, three boys who play football, you
Yeah.
know, and it is something that it was a question that I saw on Facebook the other day, but my friend Andrew Silito, and he was like, um, you never retire from hockey. And it got me thinking, I was like, well, obviously you retire,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, but you never leave it.
No, you don't. Yeah, it just seems to be, I'm just getting it from like, I'm just getting snippets of it nowadays. It's just, I find it really weird where I would know everything that was going on. I just don't anymore. I don't.
No, no. And I went through that too. I went through like, and I almost, when guys started talking about hockey, I almost wouldn't want to talk about it because I wouldn't know, all of the top scorers or points leaders or who's ahead in what
That's
division.
right. Yeah.
And so I would avoid the conversation, even though it's always been part of my life. And to analyze it and to show it on TV and stuff like that, it was like that was another huge aspect of being a hockey player allowed me to do.
Yeah.
So I do, I'm 53 in February, and for me, Jer, something's starting to twinkle a little bit. Like the love of the game is sparked again
Yeah.
somehow,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I know I'm 10 years older than you, but I'm just wondering maybe if you're in that same stage.
I am. I keep thinking, and I have recently thought about how to get back involved or how to, but I just don't have the time at this stage. And I think
No,
probably in 10 years, I would love to go back coaching at the level I was coaching at before when the kids went up, and if they're not as busy and crazy. But that's what's holding me back now, from dipping my feet back in. But I do, I just feel like I'm here with all of this hockey stuff in my head and it's not being
oh,
used. It's
yeah,
not being
yeah.
used at all.
Well, Jeremy, I got to thank you, man. Thank you so much for your time. We'll call that on overtime. And I don't think this is the end of this isn't the end of your story. It is. I think we just caught you at a really interesting part of your life.
Yeah,
So I'm
thank you.
really interested to know what happens with you. And again, I just really like to thank you for what you did. And as a hockey player, the
No,
stuff
thank
that you
you.
did on the ice, but also the stuff you did on the Isle of Wight, and also that you were very public about getting your education, because I think people need to hear that.
Yeah.
So well done to you, brother. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, anytime. Talk to you soon.
Take it easy, dude.
Cheers, buddy.
And
Bye
thanks
bye.
everyone for joining us. Another recording coming your way really, really soon. Until then, it's bye for now.